The first topic is the call of creation. So what does that mean? Well, most of us, if you have read Romans, know about this. See, Romans says, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. So they are without excuse. God has created things in such a marvelous way that all we have to do is look at them and we can see God, see his workmanship and know how great he is. Okay? We said there are three things. I kind of used what Pastor Rob Bencienza put forward in his God's design. He said this, three things. You ready? One, God is sovereign. His doctrines of creation. When you look at creation, you'll see his sovereignty without any question. Along with his sovereignty, you will see, number two, his design. You're going to see design everywhere. And number three, even though we have a cursed world, you're going to see his goodness. And you can see it. I know it's a ruined world and we're not getting the right picture, but we still can see, and we can see his goodness. Okay, and we know that when we look at this planet, we see, or the universe, we see the fact that just by looking around, just by looking at the earth itself, how blessed we are. The air I breathe, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, all perfectly planned. Too much oxygen, we'll have 70% forest fires just by increasing it by 1%. It's so well balanced. Oxygen, yes, oxygen. You have red blood cells. You have trillions of red blood cells in your body ready to take on the oxygen because you are oxygen needers. You are so in need of oxygen. And so oxygen is there. It's like perfectly designed. We look at the universe, the whole universe, and where Earth is placed is a magnificent place. It's placed right where we can see the universe. And we're in the Milky Way galaxy, and we're towards not all the way to the end. We could get hit with all this bombarding sun rays and light from the stars and particles flying. We are inside just enough to be protected. And we're inside, but towards the outside, so we can see the universe. So we are in a perfect position. We're, as they call it, the privileged planet, which is one of the quick slaves we have. It's a privileged place. And then we look at where we sit in the solar system, the habitable zone, the right temperature. I mean, when you take all these conditions and put them together, it's a miracle. It's a miracle that we live here. It's a miracle that this earth is designed for this kind of place. And then I can't help it, but think about birds flying. This is magnificence in itself. Literally, the bird has to be designed to fly. And then you look at the earth, the air, that is able to fly in an atmosphere composed of this kind of composition. And then we also have the idea that the pressure in the air, I mean, it's able to move about in a very fine way. We see that this is fine-tuned in every direction to support life. And we give God praise. So let us begin the call of creation.
You're looking at the accomplishment of a supreme artist and marveling in it. The world is designed. It's the only reasonable thing to infer from what we see. Whether you're seeing it through a microscope, whether you're seeing it through a telescope, whether you're seeing it through just simply beautiful relationships between organisms, that's truly just something that takes your breath away. It's almost like there's a signal that transcends the physical.
And there's a shock of recognition that what you see should never be taken for granted.
The artistry and design so prevalent in nature offer more than a momentary escape from the anxieties and distractions of life. For mountain peaks, waterfalls, cresting waves, and flocks of birds on the wing are each endowed with a purpose that, when understood and embraced, is nothing less than life-changing. And for anyone who pauses to ask how or why, a timeless message calls out from these wonders to touch our hearts and lift our eyes beyond the natural world. The Apostle Paul recognized this universal truth in his letter to the church in Rome. Since the beginning of the world, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through the things he has made.
The Bible tells us no man hath seen God at any time. So what's the next best thing that God can do since he does not appear to us directly? Next to actually showing up at your door on Sunday morning, the best thing that God could do to tell you that he's real, make this world. Make the world we have.
God is infinite. His creation is something that is designed, from my perspective as a scientist at least, to provide us with infinite discoveries about the nature of the being who designed it.
Stunning displays of God's invisible attributes are evident throughout the created order. They are part of what is often called God's general revelation, a message unhindered by barriers of language, culture, or time, and broadcast every moment to every corner of creation. Consider just a few examples. In the size and structure of the universe, we catch glimpses of God's inconceivable power and glory. While the precise settings of the Earth's axial tilt, rotation rate, and ideal distance from the sun all reflect his wisdom and foresight. The astonishing variety in the estimated 8 million species of animals and plants that inhabit our planet showcase God's sense of artistry and design. And in the predictable movements of the tides, the changing of the seasons, and the extraordinary efficiency of the water cycle, we can sense his unwavering faithfulness and provision for life on earth.
God gave us a world that, if we give it half a chance, testifies reliably to him. That testimony, that voice that comes to us from nature, only gets stronger and more beautiful the more you know.
And it's beautiful to contemplate the God who had this in mind when he created us, human beings, in his own image, put us on this planet to appreciate, to discover these things and learn about them, and through them to learn about him.
Now think about what that really means. If God created everything in the universe, then he's connected to every molecule of water, fragment of coral, and creature that moves. So nothing that exists is random or meaningless. Instead, as we journey through life, we're actually traveling through a gallery filled with masterpieces, all bursting with purpose and design. And each is a revelation of the Creator's existence, power, and love. May these wonders open our eyes and hearts to the reality and presence of God.
What do you think? At this time, between each session, if there's any questions, you may pose them. I just want you to be aware that they're going to be short segments. And at the end, you can save your questions. Okay. Yeah. We're without excuse. Without excuse. Wherever you look, up or down, everywhere, there's God. You can see God's workmanship, and we're without excuse. The Bible makes it clear that there's no such thing really as an atheist. He says there's no God. In his heart, he denies it, but there is a God, and he's aware of it. He just denied it. You follow? See, that's a big thing to keep in mind. Okay. Wood Wide Web. Have you looked at that? Wood Wide Web. What does that mean? Web in a wood? What's that mean? Well, I got interested in this. Yes, Anne, do you have a question, or you just read it? Oh, yeah, okay. All right, so Midia muscaria. That's a poison mushroom. Have you ever wondered about mushrooms? You eat some of them, right? Some of you like mushrooms, right? A mushroom is a fruiting body of a fungus. Fruiting body of a fungus. In other words, the fruit of a fungus. So you're really looking at a fungus. Okay, singular is fungi. Plural is fungi. I'm sorry. Fungus. So fungus is everywhere. I remember when I worked at Westminster Academy, I had a beaker and I had water in it. And I must add something in it because I just left it on the shelf, forgot it was there, came back a week later, and I saw this thing roaming around in the water. And I said, what is that? And that's kind of what we call fungus. It's everywhere. But how about when you put your fruit out and all of a sudden it begins to decay? Well, it's the fungus that got it. Keep that in mind. Fungus is everywhere. So you see this little mushroom? Take a look. There's the stem. The stem is right here. See, right in there, the stem. Underneath here is the gills. And the gills contain the spores. And there's millions and millions of spores that move when the wind moves. And they spread. Now, I bet you, except for some biology teachers here that I might know, and I don't know people who are online, that you don't even know what's going underneath, do you? Let's take a look. There's mycelium. It is a root-like structure found under a mushroom. But it doesn't even need a fruiting body. It doesn't even need a mushroom. It could be there, and you don't even know it. It could be on the surface, and you don't even know it. Because fungus is amazing. It goes everywhere. So you look at that and you say, whoa, I didn't know that a mushroom had like roots like that. Like they were kind of, yeah, the hypha and that's another part of the mycelium actually move about and they produce asexually underneath. And with the mushroom, that's what they call sexually. So it's two ways of reproducing. And there's a lot of fungus all over the world. Let's take a look at it. We're going to let the World Wide Web show us a little more detail. Let's run it.
Since its launch in 1991, the World Wide Web has helped connect Earth's human population like no other invention in history. And every moment we use it to inform and entertain, shop and sell, educate, teleconference, play games, manage money, conduct research, share ideas, subscribe, create, invent, travel, encourage, strategize, and converse with individuals, organizations, and businesses almost anywhere on the planet. Today, the web connects an estimated 5 billion people. But it isn't the only way living organisms interact on a massive scale. In fact, it's possible the World Wide Web may actually pale in comparison to another global network that's much older, larger, and perhaps even more crucial to the future of life on Earth. So put on some hiking boots and grab a flashlight, because we're about to explore a remarkable display of communication and connection, where digital code and fiber optic cables are replaced by the extraordinary power of mushrooms. Though usually small, stationary, and unobtrusive, mushrooms are the most visible components in a hidden network with the power to connect every tree in a forest. Biologically, they're classified as fungi, and their primary components are slender filaments called hyphae. These densely packed threads create the basic structure of a mushroom stem and cap, but their importance doesn't end here. Below ground level, the hyphae fan out and merge to form mycelium, living, growing colonies of fungal strands. These concentrated filaments are so dense and tightly compacted that 200 miles of mycelium fibers can be covered by a single footstep. Each hyphae strand is loaded with enzymes designed to break down, absorb, and recycle the chemical nutrients stored in soil and dead wood. Then they deliver their precious cargo to living organisms throughout the forest. Now, let's consider what's happening here on a macro scale. There are an estimated 3 trillion trees on our planet, and each is anchored and sustained by a system of roots. Right above them, clusters of mushrooms instantly pop into view as their mycelium fibers branch out in every direction. And when these strands attach to the roots, they create a sprawling array of pipelines known as mycorrhizal networks. The stage is now set for a dazzling performance. When sunlight hits the leaves, it triggers photosynthesis, a chemical process that generates not only the oxygen we breathe, but also the sugar molecules the tree must manufacture and consume. These carbohydrates are distributed throughout the tree's limbs and trunk before reaching the roots and a subterranean factory that's skillfully engineered and a wonder to behold. Here, just inches below the surface, a web of fungi and wood efficiently perform a series of vital transactions. As mycelium fibers, thinner than the diameter of a human hair, bore into tree roots to siphon off sugar molecules, the fungi's primary source of energy. In return, the fungi supply the tree with water and nutrients, including phosphorus, zinc, calcium, copper, and organic nitrogen. Simply stated, the fungi help feed the trees, while the trees nourish the fungi. But there's another level of interaction going on below these limbs, leaves, and trunks, a crucial exchange of chemical resources, not only back and forth between the trees and the fungi, but also between the trees and their neighbors, using fungi as a highway. Researchers have nicknamed this network of biological links the Wood Wide Web. The name's both catchy and appropriate, for many biologists now believe at least 90% of our planet's vegetation is connected by complex webs of fungi and roots. That means entire forests could be unified through an underground grid that enables individual trees to share resources, transmit warnings, and relay information. Here's a quick glimpse at a few of the documented collaborations that reveal how trees can often work together. The tallest, oldest trees in a forest are known as hubs, or mother trees. That's because evidence now indicates they're equipped to actually nurture their seedlings. In controlled experiments using radioisotopes to trace the connections, it appears that hub trees send their offspring shipments of carbohydrates by pumping excess sugar through the mycorrhizal network. For a seedling that struggles to find adequate sunlight in a heavily shaded forest, a steady flow of essential nutrients dramatically improves the young tree's chances of survival. How effective are these family ties? In a small 30 by 30 meter parcel of Canadian forest, DNA analysis and fungal mapping revealed that one Douglas fir hub was linked to at least 47 of its progenies by root and mycelium connections. Researchers have also discovered that dying trees release large quantities of their stored nutrients into the soil for future access by their healthy neighbors. While different species like paper birch and Douglas fir also exchange nutrients based on their specific seasonal needs, birches deliver sugars to shaded firs in the summer. And in the fall, the firs return the favor by sending nutrients to the leafless birches. In another study, an adult pine that was attacked by insects sent chemical warning signals to its neighbors through its roots and fungi. In response, the surrounding trees released defensive enzymes to protect themselves from invasion. Science is only beginning to understand the inner workings and importance of mushrooms, mycorrhizal networks, and the wood wide web. But recent discoveries are fascinating and important. Since Darwin, biologists have generally viewed trees as disconnected loners, constantly competing for water, nutrients, and sunlight. In an evolutionary battle where only the strongest organisms survive. Today, however, a rapidly growing body of evidence challenges that theory by revealing vast ecosystems of vegetation and fungi, each thriving together in cooperative, mutually beneficial relationships. While part of a global network of roots and mycelium fibers that, if laid end to end, would span nearly half the width of the Milky Way galaxy. It is a magnificent creation that speaks clearly of design, purpose, and a transcendent mind who made the Earth a living planet, perhaps unique from any other in the universe.
When I first saw that video on the John 10:10 project, by the way, if you're interested, I know that when I spoke to Lad Allen, he'd loves for you to share and go online every week. John 10:10 gives you a video. And I saw this not too long ago. it blew my mind. And that's when I got the idea. We've got to get people together. I'm putting some John 10:10 clips together so you can see. Now, this is fairly new research. And as far as I'm concerned, this kind of makes you really think how God is involved in his creation. I mean, every little thing. So do we have any questions? I'm not a fungus expert or fungi or fungi expert. Yes. Hold it for a second. I'm going to give you the mic because we're online.
Probably online. Amazon. I think you can get the book called The Mother Tree, and it's very detailed into what was just described there, and it's the research of a woman that had a hard time breaking through the male glass ceiling or whatever in the science area. But she did a lot of this research that you saw there and put it in this book called The Mother Tree. That's pretty easy to remember.
Love it.
So I think you can check it online. It's a common book. I don't think would be difficult to find.
All right. The Mother Tree. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Johnny, you looking online? Okay. We're good. All right. Okay. We're going to go to the next one. Okay. A whale of a story. I wonder what this is going to be about. How did the humpback whale, a mammal, get in the ocean? Do you know of any mammals that are in the ocean? Yeah, I know a few. But how did they get there? I mean, they breathe air just like we do. And they're warm-blooded like we are. They bear young live and they nurse the young. How did they get there? Now, I have to tell you something. From a creationist viewpoint, I know how things come together because God creates the places. Like he created the oceans, and the third day he separated the waters from the land. And you see, when he separated the waters from the land, we got salt water. I don't know if you thought about that, but that's what happened. And so we had this vacant place. He waits now to the fifth day and says, I'm going to create these fish. And he creates the fish. And not only the fish, but we got turtles thrown in there too. We got so many creatures, it's unbelievable. And even the whales. Okay, so let's get started.
Humpback whales. They're big, beautiful, and absolutely breathtaking. And whether they're humming mysterious songs that carry thousands of miles through the open sea, working as a team to surround, trap, and consume massive quantities of krill and fish in mouths wide enough to swallow a small car, or breaching their 40-foot, 40-ton bodies into the air, they are among the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But a humpback's astounding physical attributes are much more than highlights in a nature documentary. You see, their ability to thrive in a liquid universe represents a significant challenge to Darwinian evolution and materialistic accounts for the existence of complex life.
You look at its features, it's warm-blooded, it has mammary glands, it's clearly a mammal. So here's a classic evolutionary problem. How do you get a fully aquatic mammal that spends its whole life from birth to death in the water? What's the best explanation for what I see?
The Darwinian explanation for whale evolution is familiar. Long ago in the prehistoric past, a four-legged terrestrial mammal, the size of a wolf or sheep, underwent a series of gradual biological changes over millions of years.
The standard textbook account I take to be artistic license. When you look at the problem of being a land mammal that finds itself, speaking loosely, in an aquatic environment, and you've got to conduct your everything there, including reproduction, you have to have the coming together of a number of adaptations. And that is unfathomably complicated.
When we consider just a few of these specific anatomical changes, complicated is an understatement. The animal would have needed a drastic remodel of its skull to move the nostrils to the top of its head, the conversion of front legs into flippers, a reconstruction of the skeleton, including a ball joint that allowed the tail to move up and down, the transformation of a few dozen teeth into hundreds of plates lined with brush-like fibers, the reorganization of kidney tissues to accommodate the intake of salt water, lungs vastly enlarged and renovated to withstand the intense pressure of deep dives, the inclusion of a blubber layer for insulation in cold water, and modifications of ears, eyes, and skin to work effectively in an aquatic environment.
Just think of all the parameters that would have to be modified, and then multiply that by, I don't know, 1,000-fold or more than that. That's the scale of the problem that you're dealing with.
So how do evolutionary biologists explain the chain of enormous physical adaptations that could, theoretically, result in this dramatic makeover?
Using a Darwinian framework, if you look at what natural selection requires, its raw materials are undirected or random mutations, changes in the genetic material that will change the way the organism develops. There's a step-by-step scenario that's got to be worked out where undirected changes in DNA are modifying development, which is changing the anatomy of a land-dwelling creature into something that can survive all the time in water. Those mutations are occurring without any regard for what's out there in the environment. They're accidents in the genetic material. So really, in no way can the environment channel those accidents. They just happen.
To make this hypothesis even more unlikely, keep in mind that beneficial mutations are extremely rare, and when they do occur, they must work together in close coordination with other random mutations to bring about any positive change in an organism. Here's one example.
So let's imagine that the transformation you wish to achieve is transforming a leg from a terrestrial mammal into the flipper of a fully aquatic mammal like a dolphin or a whale. Now, we look at our set of mutations that are required. Let's say we've got A that's going to affect the bones. But you think about your own limb, it's not just bones. There are muscles and tendons and nerves and associated behaviors. So you look down your list of mutations and you go, well, I've got A starting my transformation, but I need B, C, D, E, and F as well. So the challenge of cooperative mutations is to have these events occur in space and time in such a way that they can jointly work together, cooperate to bring about the transformation that you need. But you know what? Those mutations, they're accidents in the genetic material. So you're essentially relying on luck. And odds are you're going to miss the target by a mile.
Research now indicates that it would take at least 100 million years to randomly generate just one single pair of cooperative mutations in a population of large mammals. Yet scientists still argue that given enough time, any biological transformation is possible.
Faced with a problem like the origin of a humpback whale, even if I grant you millions and millions of years, 5, 10, 50, 100 million years to bring about this transformation, you still face these very real limits of population size, mutation rate, generation time, and the number of features that have to be modified. If the process in question is not going to happen, it's not going to happen, and it really doesn't matter how much time you have. So have all the time you want. If this transition occurred, it did not occur by an undirected Darwinian process. That simply is not possible biologically.
Darwinism provided an explanation for the appearance of design and argued that there is no designer, or if you will, the designer is natural selection. If that's out of the way, if that just does not explain the evidence, then the flip side of that is, well, things appear designed because they are designed. And those designs simply seem too efficient and too optimum to have been cobbled together by some haphazard mechanism. And in evolutionary terms, it's kind of game over.
Testing. I'm going to share with you this picture. The National Academy of Sciences put out a publication. This is not the exact same picture, but the picture basically depicted that they had I think a Paxatius, not a Paxatius, the other one, the Rhodahectus, and they were showing that they had a bone. A couple of bones, and they had like a flipper, and not a flipper, but a bone, and they thought that could be part of a leg. Now, there was not a lot there as far as the fossil was concerned, but they certainly made a big deal of it. And that's what we find when we look at fossils. Pastor Steve, you've seen this, haven't you? Why don't we hold it? Let me just get you. You're good. You come up.
I actually wrote an article on this Pakicetus. I wrote an article on Pakicetus because what they did was they originally came up with an idea that this animal started out on land and was like a cow, and then found its way into the water, and changes took place, and also eventually came back out of the water again, developed into other kind of animals. So they constantly do this. They'll see a part of just a part of the fossil. It's not even a complete fossil evidence, and they will speculate. This is where the fin became a foot. And we see this all the time in the game that is played in evolutionary fossils.
Thank you. Yes.
Briefly, my testimony is a young Christian. My daughter was in 2nd grade, and they taught her when she that the cow walked in the water and came out millions of years later. And she said, but something inside me told me that God created the cow and God created the whale. And I was just beginning to search of what we taught on Sunday school, how that, with all these dinosaurs and stuff we were seeing in museums. And that's when I got the materials and realized this creation and evolution debate. And it was amazing.
So that's when you became a full-fledged creationist. Here you go. Yes, let me just get this mic and pass it on to you, and try it.
Is it working? Yeah. One thing they didn't mention is that when a mutation takes place, it has to occur in a sex cell. Okay, it has to occur in the testes or ovaries. So if you're looking at these animals on the screen, if a mutation occurred in the leg or in the eye or in the tail, it's useless because that dies and will not be passed on to the next generation. So the problem is hugely multiplied when you specify a sex cell.
I don't know much about this, so I'm actually asking a question.
Okay.
Even if those mutations occurred, it would seem to me vastly improbable that the animal would be suited to the environment in which it was supposed to fulfill those mutations. So we're looking at, okay, the mutations may have happened, but if they're not in the water, then they're useless.
Why would they go to the land?
Right.
Why would they go to, and why would, when they're on land, would go to the water?
Right.
See, this is logical, isn't it? Now think about it. They're teaching kids in our schools how to be illogical. And I really get really weird about this because it's lying. It's lying. They don't have the proof for this. You want to say something and pass it on? Just you got to press the button.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Also, and you know this as well, but a mutation is a loss of information. That's right. Okay, not a gain of information. So if you have a perfect paragraph with a perfect message, if you alter a single letter, you change the message.
That's right.
And it's not the message that was originally there that we say God created. It was a perfect message. And of course, it's deteriorating because of mutations over the centuries.
You can't violate the law, the second law of entropy, because no matter what happens, we're going down. Listen, I have a photograph album. Do you? You remember what you looked like many years ago? I mean, I'm not speaking for myself. So we know that there's something happening on this earth that's working against us. And so for something like that to happen, you have to have a very special condition, and everything has to be set up in certain ways. So that's where that comes from. Go ahead, Jane.
To address your point, I had just gotten the first book in God's Providence from Institution of Creation Research, and it had a picture in there of a half cow, half whale. How could that survive in either environment for millions of years? So I was able to show my daughter that, and some friends that were over in the neighborhood. She took it to school and showed her picture, and friends at lunch, and they laughed about it. But it happened the same thing in third grade. She saw the movie again, and no response from the teacher. But I didn't know to follow up at that point. I was
whenever an organism has to transfer, going from land to the ocean, live in the ocean. Take a look at the sea turtle. It can go down 5 hours without breath. It has to be designed to do that. And so you look at every animal that's in the ocean, and if they're breathing air, no matter what they are, they don't even have to breathe air. They're designed. They're designed for that environment. And therefore, it points to designer. It points to the fact that there was a space in the ocean, and God filled that space with magnificent design and creatures, honoring remember the creation doctrine, sovereignty. We see design, we see his goodness. Okay, very good. We're going to go on to the next one. We can spend a long time on that. Okay, God is in the details. I love this. I love this. Yeah, God is in the details. See that little butterfly? I really like this because when I started to teach biology, I didn't realize that there was another thing that I used to, put my feet on, stamp on, and hit and, get rid of the insects, the insect kingdom. They occupy half the species that we know of today. That should tell you something. You see, that should tell God shows off there. So let's start with God is in the details.
There's an old proverb that says, God is in the details. I like that because when it comes to nature, it's easy to direct our focus almost exclusively toward enormous displays of beauty and wonder that overwhelm our senses with their big screen, surround sound, technicolor splendor. It's a spectacular show that can take your breath away. But not far upstream from that thundering waterfall, other, more subtle miracles also unfold each day with little or no recognition from the outside world. Case in point, this butterfly, a creature small, silent, and seldom stationary long enough for close examination. Yet its body is packed with microscopic systems and biological machines that keep it alive, airborne, and stunningly beautiful. During the next few minutes, we'll use an assortment of cameras, close-up lenses, and a scanning electron microscope to explore butterfly anatomy at magnifications far beyond the power of the unaided human eye. And in the process, we'll discover that some of our planet's most brilliant creations are often hidden in the details. Let's start with a butterfly's wide-ranging sense of vision. There are at least 15,000 different butterfly species in the world, and every member is equipped with two massive compound eyes. Each eye contains thousands of individual light receptors and lenses, and together they present the world as a sweeping panorama. For unlike vertebrates that must constantly move their heads and eyes to scan what's going on around them, a butterfly's eyes create a field of vision that covers almost 360 degrees, even when its body is completely still. In other words, while the insect's head and thorax remain in a fixed position, its eyes work together to construct a spherical view. This perspective encompasses nearly 90% of the surrounding environment, including the sky and ground above and below its wings. That means the butterfly can concentrate on the food source right in front of it, while simultaneously scanning for predators everywhere else. It's like having eyes in the back of your head. You're looking at a butterfly's lifeline, an ingenious creation engineered to ensure survival. It's called the proboscis, and every drop of food the insect consumes must first pass through its tube-like walls. Immediately after emerging from the chrysalis, the butterfly assembles two hair-thin strands into a flexible conduit that's longer than the rest of its body. This device is watertight and powered by a network of muscles, nerves, and a miniature suction pump. It's a highly efficient drinking straw that's built to last a lifetime. When not in use, the proboscis coils tightly like a spring for optimal storage and protection. This elaborate feeding system is not only ideal for extracting nectar from flowers, it also collects nutrients stored in puddles, fruit, mud, and another source that has to be seen to be believed. In the Amazon rainforest, where salt is often in short supply, tropical butterflies receive their daily dose of sodium by landing on the heads of river turtles basking in the sun, and then carefully sipping teardrops from their eyes. A Of all the details required for a butterfly's construction, perhaps none are more versatile than the wealth of component parts that shape its glorious wings. Almost every wing is covered by thousands of microscopic scales. These fascinating structures consist of a thin layer of hardened protein, and each measures less than 1/10 of a millimeter across. They are organized into overlapping rows that resemble shingles on a rooftop, and individually anchored to the wing membrane by a short stem that fits securely into a socket. Many scales are covered by ridges or small openings that, when struck by light, produce a dazzling array of refracted colors. But visual splendor is far from their only purpose. Scale patterns often create systems of passive defense. This dead leaf with legs is actually the underside of a Kallima butterfly's wings. That's camouflage at its finest. Scales are sometimes arranged to mimic giant eyes that confuse predators, or on some species, vivid patterns that warn hungry birds. I'm toxic and taste terrible. Leave me alone. Wing scales are also excellent solar panels. Butterflies are cold-blooded and can't fly effectively until their body temperatures reach at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's no problem when you're covered with thermal cells designed to warm up flight muscles by absorbing and circulating energy from the sun. Once aloft, wing scales continue to play vital roles in the insect's survival. Researchers have discovered that the surface textures created by the arrangement of the scales reduce drag and increase lift by improving airflow above the wing. While these thin grooves allow dirt and water to easily slide off their outer layer. Collectively, the scales also make the wings stronger and provide the flexibility required to help generate aerodynamic thrust. A research team in Sweden used slow motion photography to demonstrate that on their upstroke, the wings don't slam together like two flat pieces of plastic. Instead, only their top edges make initial contact as the wings bend to form a pocket that traps and then releases a jet stream of air for additional propulsion. Watch closely. There's the first touch, and there's the air pocket. Then, after the wings collapse to squeeze out the captured air, there's the boost. These studies confirm significant gains in efficiency, especially at liftoff. The layers of biological detail evident in a butterfly are remarkable, and each points to a singular truth that applies throughout the natural world. Regardless of its species or size, every living organism is a masterpiece of artistry and engineering, endowed with countless molecular systems and mechanisms that reveal a creator who displays his presence through all that he has made. And if we pause to recognize these often hidden demonstrations of God's provision and power, our hearts may fill with the same sense of appreciation and discovery an ancient psalmist once expressed so passionately. How many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. I will sing to the Lord all of my life. I will sing praise to my God as long as I live.
To make you wonder, wow, little creatures like that, And here I am. I just had this thought. Elon Musk, right? And we've got the electric car. And I started to think about it. Maybe what we need to do is look at nature and see how everything is engineered, because that's the secret. Yes.
That process you were just talking about is actually called biomimicry, and the government and private industry spends billions with a B every year in doing just that. Fascinating research.
Amazing, amazing, because that's an efficient way of using energy. Your body actually produces hydrogen bombs. You don't even know it. I mean, hydrogen and oxygen combining, which is very explosive. But yet with ATP and ADP, a body, a synthesized mechanism, it's able to control it. So when I look at these things, I just marvel. I can't help but think of 1 Corinthians 1:27-29, when it says, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God.